For this story, I'll have to jump back a few years to when I was 17 and living with my father. I had been with him for a year. My father and I lived in a little 2-bedroom unit, behind my Nana's house. In the main house, as we called it, lived Nana, a handful of my cousins, my uncle and my younger sister Samantha. My Nana had owned the house for 30 or so years, and pretty much everyone in the family had lived there with her at some point. Now it was my turn. When I first went to live with my dad, I had the end bedroom and main house next to Nana's room. It didn't bother me in the slightest that my great-grandfather had died in that room. The house had a very safe, nurturing feel to it. I never felt threatened in there. Perhaps it had something to do with Nana and her Mormon ways. I was only in the house for a few months, before I moved into the unit out back with Dad and Sam moved into my old room. I noticed the odd shadow flit past me, and got strange feelings of not being alone in my room. But nothing really happened until I had been in the unit for a year. My sister Jess was visiting for the weekend as usual. She was staying in my room, on a mattress on the floor. It had been the same old routine during the day, nothing amazing. We went to bed late as we always did, around midnight. We both fell asleep without any trouble. I found myself awake suddenly after being asleep for maybe 2 or 3 hours, an estimate, I have no actual idea of the time. I had snapped wide awake for reasons unknown to me. I glanced down at my sister on the floor, thinking maybe she had said something or woken me up. She was sleeping peacefully. I lifted my eyes to my doorway and nearly wet myself in horror. Very slowly a figure on all fours was crawling right past my open door. The figure was hunched forward, head down. Clearly female to me, she was dressed in a white gown that seemed to fade out into a mist, and had long straight dark hair that hung over her face so that I couldn't see it. She herself was silvery and pale. She appeared young, definitely no older than me. Alarm bells were going off in my head. I did not want her to come into my room and I was silently praying she wouldn't. I was terrified of what would happen if she did. My room was small, you could fit a double bed in it, and you'd barely have room to walk in. All that lay between me and her was my sleeping sister. Much to my relief she crawled past my door, impossibly slow. When her head was about to pass the door frame she stopped crawling. She turned her head slowly and looked straight at me. It was as if she was saying, "I know you see me, and I see you too." This time I got a little look at her face. Her eyes, if she actually had any, were large black pits. It looked like her eye sockets had sunk right into her skull. They were little more than pools of darkness in her head. Her mouth was closed, but I felt she had horrible sharp teeth. She stared at me, still hunched, for no more than a few seconds before continuing crawling past the door out of my view. My father's room was right next to mine. Our doors were next to each other, and I'm certain she went into his room. I saw her for all of a minute if that, but it felt like hours had gone by while she was there. The whole time I had been lying in my bed barely breathing, and not daring to move for fear of provoking her. Even once she was gone, I couldn't get to sleep because I was worried she'd come back. Exhaustion won in the end, but in the morning I felt as if I hadn't slept at all. I asked my sister if she'd had a good sleep and she said yes, she didn't wake once in the night. I decided not to tell her what had happened, so she wouldn't freak out like I knew she would. I didn't ask my father anything about it, because he doesn't like talking about such things. Makes him really uncomfortable and a little fearful, I suspect. The whole thing slipped to the back of my mind, as months went by, and I didn't see her again. I even started wondering if I had even seen anything at all. Maybe I wasn't fully awake and dreamed her up? Of course, once I start doubting these things, I always get confirmation that they were real. So as luck would have it, she came back. Thanks for listening to iSpooks. Subscribe to iSpooks channel, hit the like button if you enjoyed the story and turn on the notification bell for more spooky stories to come.